Morning all. I'm very pleased to be here this morning. David asked me if I'd come along and say a few words after we met actually only a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very, very pleased to do so. I obviously want to say I think that the big lottery, Cadbury's Barrow, that goes beyond my favourite chocolate, and others have done a tremendous job. Oh, come on, that was a joke. It's first thing in the morning. You're my second meeting and I need some humour in my life. I had a very, very tough meeting earlier, so come on. I know it's a serious subject, but there's always room for chocolate, let's be honest. Anyway, and I just wanted to say I think the work that David has led and colleagues on both the task force but more generally has been just an enormous powerhouse, I think, in terms of social policy. And I think it's no secret that I have watched and admired the work that David and others have done, but particularly you. So, this is something I believe in strongly, which is why I decided to come along today. As Patrick has said, I think that across various jobs I've done, both in the voluntary sector, but also now in the public sector, I think the thing that oddly, for some of the audience, you may not believe this, but what has driven it has been a desire to tackle poverty and what we used to call social exclusion, and whether that's actually standing up for the rights of people on council estates who suffer antisocial behaviour, persuading the previous government that they had to talk about family and parenting under the Respect Action Plan, or indeed now this administration that we need to do something fairly robust, big scale and urgent, our own version of your revolution, but hopefully less measured and more trying to kick down the doors and create significant change around troubled families, which is what we're doing now. So today I'm going to pick up on a couple of the themes in the report, and I want to talk very much about how I see certainly the Troubled Families programme that I head up as being a very, very much part of this. Just for those of you that don't know, my own revolution around troubled families, which isn't mine, but actually is many people now that believe this is the right thing. What we're trying to do with families that could be called complex, could be called problem, could be called troubled. I've worked under different administrations at different times, and people call them different things. The last government used the word delivery, this government uses the word implementation. I can tell you they feel the same when they're being done to you. Oh, how lovely. That's probably nicer. That's probably nicer for you to listen to than my own good self this morning. Oh. That's probably real early intervention happening next door to one as well. Rather than us talking about it, they might be doing it. But anyway, I think the key thing about what we're trying to do is to get to the root causes of what's actually happening in these families rather than dealing with the symptoms. So, yes, there's government documents and a very clear strategy that says we want to change families, and I use that word deliberately, so that all the children will be going to school. I do find it interesting that we're even having a debate about whether or not that's a good criteria. It kind of really entertains me. If we just got every kid in this country kind of fed, watered, vaguely happy and through the school gates, and they stayed there all day, every day, and didn't have to go to some other special place called a pupil referral unit, or be excluded in the corridor, which is the latest one I've picked up on, then we would change the whole social fabric everywhere. But meanwhile, somebody's saying to me, is that a good enough criteria? It's very entertaining. That people won't be committing crime and antisocial behaviour, that people will be on the path towards work, which of course is the Holy Grail, and significantly two others, that they will no longer, these families, be dominating the public purse and dominating their own children and services' lives with the amount of problems they both have and indeed create. And the third, or the sort of fifth issue for me, sorry getting my running order wrong, is that that will then release savings, and I think this is incredibly important, that then can be spent in a very real way on other families that may not have the level of problems and complexity or troubles, whichever language you want to use, as our families, as it were, but actually are going to be in need, will not be okay, and that we need to make sure that there are services in their place, and frankly more effective services than currently that are there at the moment. I do sometimes think that we talk a lot about troubled families and dysfunctional families. I can assure you from their perspective, the system looks pretty dysfunctional and pretty troubled itself. And from their perspective, one of the best things that happens to them is somebody sorts out the system surrounding them, and that enables them to sort their problems out. So I don't think we should be too judgmental about the troubled families, because there's a troubled system that runs in parallel. Obviously, the government has brought together, I have to say this, 450 million. It's a significant sum of money and at a time of recession and actually we want to make that significant sum of money actually really worth its value. It has to go way beyond. There was a very critical choice here. For colleagues sat in the voluntary sector, and I know this because I used to work in them, if I said to them, listen, £4,000 per family, that would give one of your workers on a caseload of 10, 40 grand a year, they wouldn't sniff at that. We could have just set up a very, very big national project called Family Intervention or Troubled Families. We didn't. We made a very, very clear choice that we were going to invest that money in and through local authorities so that they were able to restructure, recalibrate and change their services around troubled families as well as sorting them out. So that actually rather than just set up another big project, we were actually able to change the system, which your report talks about, previous report talks about, that says we are spending money on the symptoms, we are not spending money on the causes. And I think that was a very big call for me. It's a much bigger job to try and restructure and change services than it is to actually set up another big project. And I think that actually has taken some nerve. It is something that occasionally I wake up worrying about, but I still stand by that it has got to be the way that we go forward. We've invested in the mainstream, not only so we reach out to these families, but that we create real change, which means people like David Robinson will be able to point to somewhere that says, actually, by doing family work in a different kind of way, they have been able to reduce the number of kids going into a pupil referral unit. They've been able to close, for the right reason, an emergency social care unit. And everybody is looking at me now thinking she's lost her mind, this isn't possible. It has to be possible, and it has to be something that we do, because otherwise, all of the world of early intervention that you all want in this room won't exist. If we don't troubleshoot the highest cost and most problematic families, we will not release the resources needed, because there isn't any money anymore. I was in Liverpool last week, and I'm sure they won't mind me saying this, they're looking at a 52% reduction in their services. One of the directors there had been to a charity and kind of legacy thing to do with the Olympics, which is why I thought I'd mention this. And the Olympics people, or whoever it is, had said to them, listen, there's great news for Liverpool. We've got £400,000 or £500,000 we can put down on the table for swimming. It's got to be for swimming because that's golden medals and all the rest of it. And the guy said, and this was a private conversation I probably shouldn't be releasing because Patrick's here from Ghana, but he said, well, the thing is, we're not even sure we're going to have swimming pools that we're funding in Liverpool next year. So it's delighted that you've got this legacy money from the Olympics. They've got an awful lot of troubled families in Liverpool, and they're costing an awful lot of money to that local authority. You have to start to see that there's a reason that we have to be quite hard-nosed about social policy now, and that we have to think through not only the consequences of not troubleshooting these families, but the financial consequences too. So 152 local authorities have actually signed up to do this. It goes across the political divide. Family intervention was pioneered under the last administration. I don't think that's any secret. And I don't think it's any secret that it's something that I think we know works with families. We just need to do it on a very, very big scale. I wanted to say that the reason behind the programme, I think I've looked at the cast list here today, and we have to accept here that despite the best efforts of many of us over the years, despite the times of boom when there were children's centres, there is this and there is that, these families dominated. They dominated anyway. You cannot meet these families without realising the intergenerational transmission, to use the language, the kind of sense that actually talk to any, the woman that's now running the Police Superintendents Association, who's from Lancashire Police, said to me, the reason I'm right behind this programme, Louise, is because when I went back to my original estate where I'd been a PC, and I went back as the head honcho superintendent, it was the same names of the same families. I sat in a room this summer and I interviewed 3 generations of women, and I won't say where it was because it was confidential, but it was 3 generations, and we were talking about the other woman in the picture that was the great-grandmother. So great-grandmother to mother to the 11-year-old that they'd taken out of school. I was appalled to come and meet me to have her voice. I was thinking, don't need your voice, want you to be in school. But anyway, I got over that. Come on, that was another joke. I'm not that tough. I promise, not really. Well, anyway, and so what I was trying to say is over 4 generations, we have been spending a lot of money on those families, but the 11-year-old had already been in and out of care. So were we getting that right? Was I getting that right in the jobs I'd done before? No, I bloody wasn't. Is it good enough that we just say we have to carry on as we are? No, it's definitely not. It's not for that 11-year-old, and it's not for the children that she's going to have, probably unless something happens that is really effective, like family intervention. She will, like her mother, her grandmother, and her great-grandmother, start to have children at 14, 15 years of age. And I don't care what you say, that's not good for her, and it's not good for her kid. So I do believe this is common sense. Your strapline, prevent today, pay tomorrow, is clearly relevant to what it is we're trying to do with our own revolution. Some of the money these agencies are spending on troubled families is necessary, but it is money spending on kind of maintaining the status quo, mitigating disaster, or standing in our way of making sure the children are protected and safeguarded, and that's where this gets very difficult. Of course, I could stand here and say it costs 13 grand just to do the legal fees on evicting somebody, and I do occasionally believe in evicting people. I certainly believe in threatening them with eviction if they won't play ball. It costs 15 grand a year to put a kid in a pupil referral unit, and you all know it costs £40,000 a year just to have a kid in foster care before I start on residential and the rest of it. But we can say repeatedly we can't keep spending money on the symptoms rather than the cure, but the problem is we do have to spend some money on the symptoms. There is a reason why we need pupil referral units right now, and actually there's a reason why we need children's social services to do safeguarding. There's a reason why, as frustrated as I was in Wirral last week when I met a mum who started at 16, has been in an extraordinarily violent relationship where she's even perjured herself in court, frankly, in order to protect him. She'd been assessed by Children's Services on one of the first occasions that he beat her senseless and left her there because the police called social services in. Of course, because he was taken into custody, the child was no longer at risk, she was deemed a good mother, and off they went again. No further intervention in that family. Man comes out of prison, 4 days later, they're all on a bender, she's beaten senseless again, police call, Children's Social come back in. The kid is now 6. The kid has now got behavioural difficulties. We walked away each time without helping her and changing her. The good thing I can say is that Wirral have got a family intervention project. The family intervention worker is helping this woman change. She's got an unborn child, which if she doesn't play ball will be removed at birth this time. And actually, the odds are, because of what has happened to her in terms of changing and helping her at the age of 22, I felt that she had a fighting chance this time round of actually not letting this man back into her life and hanging on to her children. But the 6-year-old has already suffered some damage. Collateral damage has already happened in that case. So I think the difficulty thing here is that we have to continue to spend on some emergency services, but at the same time, we have to do some of the prevention in a different kind of way. And that's very much what I want local authorities to do in terms of the way they're engaging with our programme. The other cracking one for me, and I just felt, given the audience and some of the people here, it's like, I do have a recollection of Heseltine touching down in Toxteth for City Challenge. I have a very clear recollection of being told by Sheila McKechnie, who was my boss at Shelter, that I had to go to the North East and sit on a single generation budget committee. I fully recall the New Deal for Communities, and I was well aware of the Neighbourhood Renewal Programme, my own little Respect programme, tiny one in the margins, but there are people here that supported that and got it set up and going. In amongst all of that, one estate in the North East that has been through every single one of those, and I know like the back of my hand, I even know the sign that you go up to, which sums it up in one. It's this sign that where it goes like that and the arrow goes out towards the estate. What is really interesting about the road sign is there's no reconnection back into Newcastle. It's like, off you go to that estate and you don't have to come back. 3,000 kids surveyed, right? This has been through every bloody regen under the bloody sun. You know what I'm going to say, and I've sworn twice and I'll get told off for that later. One had done, and I took me ages in this meeting, I was thinking, what are they on about? And they said, one child out of the survey had had one preventative oral treatment. And I sat there thinking, what's that? And eventually I said, do you mean they've been to the dentist for a checkup? Yes. One, yes. 10%, which is 300 children, if we take the percentage out for a minute and just talk about children, have pitched up at the A&E department for emergency dental treatment. Okay, what really annoys me about this is, of course, that's a total and utter waste of money. Dental treatment for under 18-year-olds is free. The dentist is walking distance of most people on that estate. What really gets to me is those kids turn up at an A&E in agony. That really upsets me. And that they have been through every one of these initiatives, and somewhere in here is a lack of determination, a lack of common cause, a lack of decision that actually that simply isn't good enough. And we should be shouting from the bloody rooftops about it, not necessarily, all due respect, and I write reports myself and I do forwards and I get my hair done to have my picture done, so I'm not casting any stones about this. Come on, that's my third joke, and it was spontaneous. But somehow we have to change the culture around the lack of determination, and that we have to be more challenging. So, I realise, sorry, I'm going. Of course, I think family intervention is one of the ways forward. I think that we know that the results of family intervention are phenomenal. It's a single, dedicated worker. I use the word dedicated because for me they're dedicated to that family to help them change. What's really interesting when you listen to the families and they talk about their family intervention worker, they know their name. They know their name. They don't say, oh, Louise, I've got to go on Thursday to that building. I've got to go, I think that's the probation office. Who's your probation worker? I can't remember their name. Oh, I'm off to a parenting course. Who's organised that for you? I'm not sure when I'm supposed to get there. The really striking thing when you listen to the families is the sense that the worker is dedicated to them. So it's one family, one worker and one plan. Troubleshooting the system around the family as much as them. I think we have to be clear, honest and assertive that we won't take no for an answer. And I think that is about telling people the truth about what needs to change in an authoritative voice. I am struck again and again by serious case reviews, which now we can read. And, you know, I feel so sorry for Annie Hudson, the Director of Children's Services in Bristol, because she's a very, very good woman and she's a very brave woman. But the last serious case review about the kid killed methadone by their parents was utterly striking. About, if you look through it, each time it says lack of challenge, lack of challenge, lack of challenge, lack of assertiveness, lack of authoritative voice. You know, it's not okay not to get up and get your kids to school. That's not me being non-judgmental, it's me saying it's common sense, it makes sense. It's not okay. You know, it's simply not okay to not get your kids to school. It's not okay not to get your kid to the dentist and then end up in the A&E department. You know, these things just aren't right, and it's unpalatable, and it makes me sound like I've got horns coming out of my ears. I can see your faces, and I'm thinking, God, I've got to get out of here before they lynch me. But, you know, the truth is, it's okay to be judgmental. We are social workers to be judgmental every single day about whether parents are neglecting their children, and then they whip them into care. So, of course, I think we need to be assertive and honest with families. We need people that are able to roll up their sleeves and give practical help to change their ways, not just making assessments the whole time and then leaving them to it. And of course, I believe that we sometimes need to use and threaten sanctions if families refuse help. And I believe that because I'm simply not prepared to tolerate that children grow up in families because we weren't prepared to be challenging, we weren't prepared to be assertive, we weren't prepared to force them onto a parenting course if that's what it took, because actually we weren't prepared to have that out with the parent. The children suffer, and that's why sanctions matter. So the evidence around these projects are phenomenal. 36% reduction in child protection concerns, 52% reduction in crime, 57% reduction in truancy and social exclusion. They're impressive policy terms results, and it's what I intend to pursue. But I wanted just to finish, because I'm sure that's what you want me to do, is that one of the things that David Robinson said at the very wonderful Empower kind of 25-year thing, which I have thought, my God, he's encapsulated. Quite often the world gets caught in left and right, doesn't it? Quite often right and left politics is what's at play. So you've got potentially the right that say people need to take more responsibility, we need to, you know, get into jobs, You've got a caricature of the right, which is, and actually problem families are, if you're the Daily Mail, they actually call them feckless. The left say this is all about money, this is all about poverty, and actually we just need to get these people more income and more support and more services. There's some truth in both of those, and there's some wrong in both of those. And I think this policy for me, and what you're trying to say, both with the triple dividend and the one you're publishing today, is that there are some things that are frankly right as opposed to wrong. And it is right that we troubleshoot, help support troubled families, both for the mums that I keep meeting because I don't want them to, you know, the woman that said to me, Louise, I've had 10 children and what really upsets me is they were born into me as a mum. I don't want to meet any more mums like that take 10 children, all of whom are now having very difficult lives. I don't want that in my country, and I don't mind who's in power. I don't want that. And so I think sometimes the difference between right and wrong is important. But challenge, I'm sorry, I'm going to make some challenges.
Louise.
Yeah, 3 very quick things. You talk about a duty on the government. What about a duty on funders and voluntary sector to collaborate? You know, I don't want a duty on you, but, you know, at some level, come on, guys. I've had a queue of people telling me the solution to troubled families lies in their voluntary organisation project. I just don't know it. From drugs to alcohol to this to that to the other, everybody's got the solution. Nobody's prepared to collaborate. Everybody says their money, oh, do this with this and you'll save money. Where's your real hard evidence for that? Funders still want to fund things on the side of this rather than right in the middle of it. And, you know, yes, you know, I understand why people have to fund voluntary organisations, but local authorities look after children. Local authorities look after half the people caught up in your early prevention world. So, I do think we can't ignore local authorities and we can't ignore collaboration. You talk about targeting early intervention. Some of that wasn't right. There is a need for reform. And the idea that everything was okay before isn't. Youth clubs didn't open on Friday nights before. There I was in a very high-profile constituency, went into the youth club, Wednesday, fabulous place, said to them, this is fabulous, why aren't you open up on a Friday? They tell me the kids are all out on a Friday, to which, honest to God, the workers said, the kids like to go drinking on a Friday. That really happened in a place where I really didn't want it to happen, with workers that I really didn't want to feel that way. So, you know, we hand out hardback books to every mother whose kid turns 2. I think that's crazy. So reform, you can't just say everything was okay before and let's roll it out. You have to think about what you're rolling out. So that's my tough messages. Reform, target early intervention, and you want a duty on us, what about a duty on you? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Louise has to go to 10, so what I'm going to do